Hello guys, this is Panzermeister36. Today, we're going to be looking at making color modulation effects using oil paint. Color modulation is when you bring in different variations to the base color of your tank, and often this is done using an airbrush during the initial painting stages. However, I actually prefer doing it after the painting and after the pin wash, by actually blending in oil paints to create the variations. This is a lot more easy, a lot more controllable, and also if you're a beginner and you don't have an airbrush, this is an excellent way to bring more interest into your model. Our subject in the video today is going to be this little T40 amphibious light tank that we've been looking at recently in a couple of videos. We already looked at applying the oil pin wash to make fake shadows, as well as how to apply this field applied messy winter camouflage pattern. However, the rear areas of the tank are looking pretty boring. Like real boring. That's just flat green. It needs some more interest to it. So we're going to actually bring some modulation to the green areas today in this video. So let's get started. These are the oil paints that I selected to make the modulation on this model. It's actually really easy. I just picked a lighter and darker version of the base color, in this case light and dark green, a brown for dirty effects, and also a yellow for some kind of extreme highlights. Didn't really need the yellow that much, honestly. I'm also going to use some Wilder enamel thinner here. This is for the blending of the effects and also cleaning my brush afterwards. And I'm also going to need a couple of brushes. What I have here is a 000 round brush that's honestly in pretty bad shape. I really should have used a more pointed one. And also a 1/8 inch angular shader, which is for blending. And yes, I'm using the Wilder weathering oil paints. If at all possible, I recommend you get, or at least try to get, some actual modeling oil paints. So those could be Wilder ones, or the 502 Abteilung, or the more recent MIG Ammo oil brushers. Now these oil paints are actually meant for modeling, so they dry faster, they dry matte, and they also work very well on plastic surfaces rather than canvas. But if you can't, you can always go with artist oils as a backup, and if you do, I recommend going with this brand here, Winsor & Newton, and go with the Winton line, because I find that those have a good pigment, and they're the best artist oil that I've ever used for modeling. But actual modeling oils are a little bit better than that. So I begin by just applying these to my little palette here. I got a fancy new palette, looking really good. And then I also poured a little bit of the thinner into a little cup here. This is a sauce cup I bought in bulk at a Chinese restaurant supply shop. Awesome. And just like that, we are ready to begin the actual oil weathering process. I'm going to begin by picking the lighter green color as the highlight and applying this to the tops of some of the boring green panels. These are oil paints, so they have a long working time, so don't worry about applying it like this, because you can wait like half an hour or so, maybe even more, and you can still blend them out super easily. Now I'm grabbing some of the darker green color, which for some reason my camera thinks is blue, but it's actually dark green, and I apply it to the bottom of the panels. Then I clean my brush, and I get out my actual applicator brush. And there is no thinner on this brush at all. It is completely dry. The oil paint has a long drying time, so I can actually just apply it, wait a little bit, and then blend it out to completely dry. I'm just rubbing it out so it kind of slowly fades out towards the top of the panel, and then do the same thing with the lighter green at the top, but I'm blending it so it fades out further down. And that is how you get the gradient between highlight and kind of darker color at the bottom. You also want to leave some of the main base color showing through, because that's your sort of mid-tone between the two. And yes, this is as easy as it looks. You just blend it. It's actually super easy. No thinner required. Now look at how the back looks right now compared to the side here. It looks a lot better. The side here looks very, very boring. It's just flat green. But on the back we have that highlight and shadow effect. So then I repeated the same process on other areas of the tank. Now it's kind of hard doing it now because you see I've already got the whitewash on there in some places, so I can't put the green over that, otherwise it's going to turn the whitewash green. So I'm kind of picking some of the areas where I kind of want to highlight on top of the horn here, and there's some heavier green chipping areas, and I can actually apply it over there as well. And the fenders are also very heavily chipped, and they're cool features, so I can actually get some nice contrast there with the light green versus the darker brown oil pin wash we already applied in the grooves. Now I only used the yellow in like 3 places, and I only used it for like a super bright highlight. So I did on the back of the top of the turret here, and also a little bit on the fenders. And honestly, I probably didn't even need to use this at all. I could just use the light green and it would have been fine. So I was just overcomplicating it there, but here's the result of the green oil fading effects. Well, I guess I should call it color modulation more than oil fading, but it looks really, really cool. Suddenly the back of our model looks a whole lot more interesting because there's actually some variation to that flat green. And other areas of the tank too that are just kind of green as well now have some more variation to them, which is helping to unify them a little bit with the busier areas of chipping, but we're going to need a little more effects later, of course, to kind of finalize that. So now I want to do some kind of initial dusty, dirty effects, which is kind of more modulation effects. So I grabbed some of the brown color I picked, got a little bit of thinner in it just to make it a little bit more of like a filtery consistency, and then I applied it around the areas where I kind of wanted to start some dirty effects. We're going to apply more dirty effects later with enamels and stuff, but right now I just kind of want to initiate those. So I apply it, and then now I'm grabbing my blending brush again, and I'm just kind of rubbing it in dry, no thinner required. You want to be careful over the white areas because you can really, really quickly overpower them using the brown. So that's why I actually thinned it a little bit with the oil paint thinner you saw initially. This way it's a little more of a tint than an actual kind of like painting application. I focus this around areas where the dirt would build up most. So around hatches where the crew's walking around. Also the turret ring's an interesting spot because nobody really kind of puts their foot in there. So it's not really going to get rubbed off. So that's an area where a lot of dirt's actually going to build up. And also kind of accentuates the edge of the turret and the hull. It kind of makes like a highlight there. Under this ventilator thing as well, we're going to do a lot of oily, greasy effects later. But I also figured, we'll dirty it up a little bit. And in some places, if you have a little bit of trouble blending like I did here, it wasn't really working too well, I decided to get a tiny bit of thinner on my brush, a tiny bit, and then that really helps actual blending. But I wouldn't recommend that unless you really, really need to, because if you get thinner on your brush, it's very, very easy to actually start removing the effect rather than blending it out. And here's where I'm doing the same kind of thing, but lower down, just to kind of get that little bit of a dusty, dirty effect kind of closer down to the tracks. And again, we're gonna put a lot more dirty effects on there later, but this is just kind of the initial kind of mapping that out for us. And by blending that out, you get just kind of like a little bit of variation and dirtiness to the white. It's pretty subtle, but subtle is the name of the game here when you're working with oil paints. And there we go. There's the complete effect on our tank. Now this looks a lot better than it did, like an hour ago. This is super, super easy, super quick, just a little bit of oil paint work on there. And suddenly the model has a lot more interest to it. We got a little bit of dirty effects going on here. Just the beginnings of it, of course. And then the green areas look a whole lot better now. They're a lot more interesting because they're not just one color, there's multiple colors. There's a gradient between light and dark. Same thing with the fenders here. You can see they look a whole lot more interesting. And also the heavier chipping areas as well. And it's super easy. I only actually needed these 4 oil paints. And really, I only actually needed 3 because the yellow didn't really do that much. So you can do this same effect on any tank. You see a lighter dark version of the base color, and then a brown color for the dirty effects. And it can work on anything. On this Panzer III here, I did a light blue, dark gray, and brown. On this Stug 3 here, I did a light yellow like a buff, darker yellow, and a brown. And here you saw me, light green, dark green, and a brown. Just all depends on the base color of the tank. That's how you choose a light and darker color, and then you just pick a brown to go with it. Anyways, that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you are inspired to try out some oil paints. If you have not tried out oil paints yet, highly, highly recommend it. They are probably the most powerful tool for weathering. They're super, super great. And I'm going to actually be using them more in the future on this tank, where we do some more dusty, dirty effects later. We're also going to do some more stuff like grease, dirty grime effects, and also some rust after that. So I hope you look forward to those videos. I'm going to look forward to making them and bringing them to you guys. Until then, thanks for watching very much. Thank you for liking, commenting, everything you guys do for me. It's always awesome. And also thanks to all the Patreon and PayPal supporters who give me a little bit of money every month, which helps me buying the paints and products you see in the videos here. So as always, thanks for watching very much. This is PanzerMeister36. I will see you next time. Goodbye and happy modeling.